I want to answer a couple of things quickly. Number one, we have signs all over the building. We're not hard to find. So if you have a story, in the front row here are three of you. I can't remember who came. I can't see exactly. From the union executive of the public sector workers who do the maintenance work at public housing. And they may be privatized out of a job within a few months. They were walking down the street and they saw our signs and they walked in and we met with them for 2 hours and now we're planning a whole campaign together with the Mark Steiner radio show and we're going to look at who's this, who benefits from this privatization and so on, which again has a lot in common. Why does the media here and people dislike Venezuela so much is because they have started to confront privately owned property and are trying to make more property public rather than the other way. Where here they're trying to take what's left of some public property and make it private. But I want to talk about something very important though, because you raised an issue of we're only here in Baltimore. Well, we're not. We've been doing national and global news before we got to Baltimore. And about something close to 35% of our audience is around the world. But our problem is we don't have enough money. We get emails all the time. Will you create a real news bureau in Europe? Will you create one in Mexico, one in Brazil, in India? We all the time. We could be a global platform. And well, I hope we will. And well, right now, our most important strategy is to break through to a mass audience in Baltimore, because it's not enough to talk to this kind of small stratum of people that are already kind of watching and listening to this kind of stuff. But the fundamental problem is we have to persuade people to part with more of their money. Because that's what the other side has. Mainstream media has money.
Tons of it.
So we can't do good journalism, and we need professional journalists. We need 5, 6, 7 at least to create a real Baltimore bureau here. It was kind of funny. I was meeting somebody from the city the other day, and they were laughing how we're the best resource news organization in Baltimore after the Baltimore Sun. Well, that might be true, but isn't that a pathetic comment? Isn't that pathetic? Now, we have a great building here because one guy inherited some money and gave us money to do this building. But that doesn't pay for the journalism. So, you know, our challenge right now is we have to keep improving our content as much as we can. At the same time, it's a bit of chicken and egg, because we can't do a lot more without more money. And this is not subtle at all. There actually will be a thing out there where you can donate some money. Do you want to ask more questions? See if there's more questions?
More questions? Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
At the back here. There, go ahead.
I consider myself to be probably one of Baltimore's more active citizens, and I don't call myself an activist. I am an active citizen. And, you know, we have a problem here where we elect people who look like me, and they don't know what being black is. They don't understand their African descent and how important in a city of 63% African Americans that you got to take care of them.
Right.
And I spend every moment of every day, Monday through Friday, pushing buttons in City Hall, okay? So I challenge them to make better decisions. I'm the only one who shows up at hearings half the time. Okay, I need help. I need the citizens, the other active citizens in Baltimore to help me, okay, attend these hearings. You know, right now we're talking about housing, and I appreciate that the union folks are here, but there is the annual plan for the Department of Housing, which has been on the street since February the 28th for public comment. The public comment period ends March the 29th. I'm going to write my public comments and put them in writing. Okay, and I'm going to tell them how I don't like how they're spending the $300 million a year that they get for housing. And not to mention we got homeless people. All right, 4,000 homeless people on the streets of Baltimore every night. Okay, they get $40 million just for homeless people every night on the street. There's 4,000. If you divide 4,000 into 40 million, that's 10,000 a person. I can find an apartment for somebody for $10,000 a year. Okay, why can't they? I need everybody in this room and everybody who hears my voice to step up, become an active citizen. because your citizenship is about telling government no when you don't like it. You don't have to be an activist. Just engage in your civil rights. That's all.
Yeah. You're up in the front here. We got a microphone up here.
I'm a member of a student-led group called Free Your Voice. We've been around our community and stuff, but we're trying to grab attention from other communities, but we don't know how to do that yet. So I was going to ask, do you have like any advice for that?
How many of you belong to a church in this room? How many of you belong to a mosque in this room? How many of you belong to a synagogue in this room? How many of you are members in a recreation center in this room, or a union in this room? So forth. Okay. You know, it's hard for us, I think, and certainly it's hard for me, who we all think about this a lot, just as an individual, to figure out what am I going to do? But the I is always connected to somebody else in a church, a synagogue, a union, a civic club, a basketball club, a tennis club, or something. This is where social media really begins to be very, very important. Those networks of networks, that the story that I'm about to tell you about you have not heard, but these people are just like you and me, except they're suffering from pollution and I'm suffering from the lack of other citizens coming to Citizen Hall. I think we also have to change our narrative, going back to the young man's story here. You know, in the 1950s, I think 55 or so, the Quakers came up with this very powerful framework called Speak Truth to Power. I've started to say, I'm not really interested in just speaking truth to power. I'm interested in us becoming power. And now, we have to have governance. We have to have representatives. 300 million people can't sit all at the same time every time to decide on a major issue of significance to the nation or to your own street. It's just, so we have to have representative servants that we groom and we select. Look at who's behind these cameras. Look at these young adults behind these cameras. They are not the future. They are right now the future now of new media. They will not, all of them, always be here at Real News. Some of them will go off into other places, showing up in some of the established media, creating new establishments of media. We have to take a long view, is my point. We have to get out of this notion that every 2, every 4, and every 8 years we're going to live and die. We have a national election coming up. For those of you who are not just Republicans, those of you who are not ultra-conservative Republicans, Hillary Clinton has already been crowned. Why? 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 On my sister's observation here, Barack Obama, who was certainly much better than John McCain, but couldn't talk about being black. When the prisons are black and brown, that's everybody's tax dollar question in here. It's whether you are black-skinned or not, your tax dollar is going for that, as is mine. That's why we should have been talking about the question in addition to him being black. But we let him get away with that. The wars, I was just with some people yesterday and who were veterans looking at poetry, and they're talking about how poetry is being used for all of these veterans who come back and they're in such pain and they've lost limbs and whatnot. And I asked the question, why aren't we using art and culture to stop wars rather than saying that we support the troops in this abstract way of sending them off to unjust wars? We have to change the narrative, and we just have to change it, and we have to change the time frame. Otherwise, we will always be in the complaint mode, in the petition mode, never in the full self-actualization mode. And I wish we had a blueprint that said if you just followed equation A versus equation B, we would be in heaven. But we have to create this road as we walk it. And we just have to walk it and create it.
Let me just, on the incinerator question, it's a good example. It's like the public sector, public housing issue. It's a reflection of you can't get in the media. You've had protests, you've been organizing. All the scientific evidence that we've been able to look at is this incinerator is deadly. We're about to come out with a piece with a scientist from Johns Hopkins who says that the nine-page report, is it? Where's Jessel? The 9-page summary that's been the state issued to defend the incinerator project is wrong, scientifically wrong. So we're going to try to do that. But what these gentlemen are saying is the Real News and other independent media will only be as strong as if everyone buys in. And we have a phrase that goes back to something earlier James was saying. You have to help us make real news, and we're going to help you make real news. But your problem is you can't get your issue on the front page. So what we have to do is take over that space in Baltimore where we're the media of Baltimore.
Right. Right.
And not just Baltimore. This is just one city.
Right.
But this can happen in lots of cities. Like next stop for us, if it works here, is probably a place like Oakland, then Detroit. And there's reasons why the cities that are majority African American, those are actually the cities that have the most possibilities of doing this.
We actually advocate for the homeless here in Baltimore, along with Belvedere Real Care Providers. And we actually are trying to get the homeless off the street and make a difference. How can we do that when we're constantly being stopped in what we're doing from the mayor, from her office? How do I take the money that she's been given so we can use it? You know, how do we take power away whenever you have open meetings and she only chooses to answer people that don't live in Baltimore? Do you understand what I'm saying? How do you do that? Because it's frustrating, because we've about protested out. We need to do something to take this power away from her.
Boy. If we had those answers,
No, I got a suggestion. I got a suggestion. There's some people here from the paper Word on the Street too. Yeah, that are working on this kind of issue. Exactly. Yeah. You with me here? But first of all, there's short term and longer term. The shorter term is, why aren't shelters safe and a place people on the street actually would want to go and spend the night? That's the shortest term question. There's people on the street that just don't find shelters livable. So that is but I would put back to people on the street, because there are some people on the street that have maybe, they have either psychological or other reasons they can't do what I'm about to say, but I think they're a minority. People on the street got to get organized. They have to demand safe shelters. They have to be in front of City Hall. Why isn't there a movement for safe shelters in this city? Okay, no, but again, part of the, well, you get removed, then you don't. Okay, when was that?
3 years ago.
All right, well, if every movement ended when a few people got locked up, we would still be back 500 years ago.
And we know that lesson of creating a crisis. That is, where a crisis in its most simple form, because things don't work in normal ways.
But just let me finish.
Civil disobedience is something that is one of the issues. But we have to live that in order to make something transform, to begin to adjust itself to what the democratic demands are. But I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. You just have to go back to the history of Baltimore, of other victories that have been won in the city, and we have to remind ourselves of those lessons, and we have to particularly remind ourselves of how long it took and how complex it was, and get down to do the work. It's not going to happen all in my lifetime or your lifetime.
Well, I think
but if
this
we don't
should
do
happen
our
in
work,
our lifetime.
But
No,
if
I
we
think
don't,
it should,
if we
James.
don't do our work,
no, I'm disagreeing with you.
Well,
because you keep talking about this long term.
I know, but if you, but just,
and if you keep saying long term, it will be long term.
But just as it took us hundreds of years to be in this room, of the different races, ethnic groups, cultural groups, language groups that we are, those are lessons that we have to learn. Yes, we would like to speed it up, but let's not get trapped into idealism that I gave it my best yesterday. That's all I can do. Now all I can do is complain about it.
No, but what I'm suggesting is that this idea of focusing on taking power in Baltimore is not a long-term project.
That I would agree with you.
It's a 5 or 10-year project.
That I would agree with you.
So we better have a 5 or 10-year plan for Baltimore and for Maryland. Same thing is already being talked about in other cities and other states. So, I mean, I agree with what James is saying. You're not going to have, like, transform the country and, overnight. Yeah. But we better focus on short-term stuff. And I've been thinking about this for a while. Why, like, word on the street has to do more than report on homeless people. There has to be, I don't understand how you can't, if there's 4,000 people, we're 4,000 or 3,500 people outside City Hall, but at least now we'll be there to cover it, because last time you did it, nobody would cover it, I assume.